Hi folks, Chuck here again to talk about more books that I love, particularly science fiction and horror books. We got a really good response to the initial one that we did a little while back regarding collections, short story collections, single author collections that I really, really love. And so I thought I'd do more of that because there's a lot of single author collections that I love, as well as anthologies. I really do love a short story for various reasons. So I'm going to do another one. Quick disclaimer, all of the books I'm going to look at this time around are by people that I'm either friends with or very close personal acquaintances of, some of whom I've met, some of whom I've only ever known via the magic of the electric internet. But that aside, these are all absolutely deserving of my love, in my opinion. These are books that have affected me deeply. The stories within have affected me deeply, and yeah, I want to talk about them. Not because they're mates, but because it's damn good writing. Angela Slatter. This is Winter Children, a fairly recent, from the last few years, collection. Angela Slatter is better known as A.G. Slatter in most circles, writing dark fantasy, often about witches and the like. But she also writes, under her own name, Angela Slatter, some of the most terrifying horror stories I have ever read. There are at least 3 stories in this collection alone where, without any exaggeration, I felt like I needed to go and have a hot shower and scrub my skin clean after reading them. Yeah, I'm getting unsettled just thinking about it, to be quite honest. You know what? That's enough of that one. Yeah, we want to be able to sleep tonight. S.G. Browne, Lost Creatures. I love S.G. Browne's work. He does mostly sort of humorous stuff. He's done superhero stuff. He's done science fiction stuff. He's done, horror. I've talked about before about Breathers, his zombie novel, which again put a unique spin on zombies that I've always loved, and remains one of my favourite, all-time zombie novels. This is his collection of short stories, and it's a really great collection. There's stuff in here that is genuinely horrific. There is stuff in here that is humorous. There is stuff in here that is pastiche, pastiches on known sort of horror templates or franchises or what have you. All really well written, all fun. That's what underpins pretty much everything that S.G. Browne writes. It's fun to read. So, S.G. Browne, check him out. Greg Chapman, amazing artist. I've had some of my book covers done by Greg Chapman and worth every penny. Also an amazing author who themes quite a lot of his short work, particularly around Halloween. And this very slim volume, The End of Halloween, 5 Tales of Halloween, is great. In some cases, it puts a sort of an Australian spin on Halloween because he's an Australian author. In some cases, it's just you wouldn't know whether it was Australia or America. That's for the best. He taps into, I guess, the essential feelings of what Halloween is and what it means to people, and also what it means in terms of horror and the paranormal and so on and so forth. And they're all very different, the stories. This is one that I would definitely recommend to anyone, but honestly, everything Greg has written is pretty magnificent. I would honestly suggest that you go out and pick up one of his short story collections, because there are quite a few of them out there. There's certainly been a couple of recent ones that have won awards or been nominated for awards, and deservedly so. So yeah, if you don't know Greg Chapman's work, please do look him up. Well worth reading, whether you are from overseas or Australian. It's something that I think pretty much anyone can enjoy. Last Year When We Were Young by Andrew J. McKiernan. Now, sadly, this book I know is out of print. It shouldn't be. It's excellent. It's got some amazing horror stories in it. And I'm very glad. There's a thing with a lot of authors, particularly ones that I've known, who kind of, are incredibly productive for a few years, as I was, and then they kind of drift away from it, pressures of work, pressures of life, what have you. And then ultimately, hooray, they drift back to it. And Andrew, I understand, has drifted back to it. But I managed to get this copy. I was a bit late to the party, but I got this copy of his single author collection, and it's terrific. There's stuff in here about there's ghost stories and there's other kinds of horror story in here. And I would definitely recommend. There's weird sort of dystopian landscapes and weird apocalypses and all sorts of stuff. Each story is different from the one that came before or after it. And it's always highly inventive. I would definitely recommend his work to anyone. Really, really great read. One in particular, The Message, was turned into a short film quite recently about someone who takes on a job simply passing on messages that come in on a telephone, which doesn't sound too bad, except that it's very clear that the people who are ringing this phone are no longer with us. And that leads to some really dark stuff occurring, not just in general, but very specifically for the lady who is answering these calls. And it's a belter of a story. And finally, this collection I'm going to show you is actually, I think, probably my favourite single author collection of all time. And that's saying something because I've read a lot of them. The fact that it's by a mate of mine is neither here nor there, to be honest. I love this collection so much that when it came out, I was, well, at the time I owned and ran my own specialty science fiction, fantasy and horror bookshop. And particularly with the horror, what made it for my regulars was the fact that I would hand sell stuff. And I think this is something that more bookshops need. They need someone on hand for whatever genre it is. They need someone in the romance section, and they need someone in the general, fiction section, or someone in the science fiction section who knows that genre and can actually say to the customers, hey, this is something you should be reading because ABC. And it might be, particularly when it's small press, something that they would not otherwise have heard of and definitely wouldn't have bought otherwise. And I managed to make this our number one best-selling horror book for many, many months after it came out. And yes, a lot of that was me pushing, but I never had anyone come back and say that they disagree with my assessment that this was a magnificent work. Creepy, endlessly inventive. And again, as with some of the ones I've mentioned already, there are stories in here that still stick with me to this day, that just live up here rent-free, and deservedly so. It's Martin Living's Living with the Dead. Livings has done a number of novels. He's done a lot of short stories over 30 odd years of writing, I think. Yeah, and he's an absolutely cracking writer, and it absolutely infuriates me that he is not better known. Not just among Aussies, but overseas. He should be known everywhere. He strikes me as being a bit like Thomas Ligotti. Not so much in his style, but in the sheer endless inventiveness and the feel that you get from the stories. There is some amazing stuff in here. And one particular story called Lolo, that again lives rent-free in my head, which is about a babysitter and they're charged dealing with what appears to be a toy clown. It is horrific. And if you're one of those people who is not scared by clowns, I can promise you, after you've read this story, you will be utterly terrified of clowns, particularly toy clowns, and you will never want to turn your back on one ever again. That's really all I can say. But please, 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 please look up Martin Living's, find something of his, buy it, read it. You will love it. He's also done an amazing Australian werewolf tale called Carnies. Yeah, Martin Living's needs to be read by more people. So please, you know what to do. So that's your 5 more for this time around. What do you think? Have you read any of these? Do you know any of these authors, but you maybe haven't read the collections? Are you inspired to go and try some of these? It's a hard thing to kind of recommend short story collections because you can't really give a synopsis of a collection. You can give a synopsis of a novel and people will go, oh, that sounds interesting. But this is also why I'm trying to pick out some individual stories or give an idea of the vibe of them all. Yeah, I hope that's inspired you to go out and try out some new authors. As I've said before, short stories are a great way to find out if you like particular authors. So what do you think? Comments down below as always, and we'll talk some more about books soon.